And we are live. Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 22. It's a big milestone. And I was just checking the stats a little while ago. We are at 98 subscribers. We're almost at 100. That's going to be our first major milestone. So, some people that are watching, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Let's get us to 100. We won't get a YouTube plaque or anything, but maybe we'll make some out of tinfoil and some cardboard and we'll throw it in the background. Yeah, tonight's a big night. It's the return of the Bro Show. We haven't had a Bro Show probably like September 4th or 5th. Had all kinds of different things happening. We did have, several episodes of Ladies Night, which went very well. That was a lot of fun. And we'll have more episodes like that coming up in the future. Got a couple of guest panelists coming up too in November and December. And we'll continue that. But tonight, I want to give a little hurricane sit rep. Hurricane Melissa, one of the largest storms out of the Atlantic in history. Is still tearing up in the Caribbean. I think it's already through Jamaica. It's going to Cuba and the Bahamas now. Hearts and prayers for all the people down in the islands in the Caribbean. I don't know what the devastation is, but I'm sure it's going to be massive. I've seen reports about dozens of deaths in different places. I'm sure within the next couple of days, there'll be plenty of nonprofits out there looking to send aid down or get money donations. One thing to remember, we all might want to give stuff, but it might be pretty hard to get it there. One of the challenges we had when, I think it was Irma came in, one of the times that Puerto Rico got hit, I think it was the first one where they were losing all the power and all that stuff was in the warehouse. I had friends in men's groups at churches and stuff. They were putting together all kinds of donations, putting them in containers. The hard part was getting these goods down into the islands. It's almost kind of reminds me of North Carolina, where the infrastructure was so damaged and the federal response was not geared toward helping. You had people coming in with their own helicopters and their own ATVs and to bring in supplies and relief to the different areas. We may have to sit there and do something similar for the islands. Guys, get your boats out, get them ready. But watch out for the U.S. Navy and the Coast Guard. President Trump is playing around over there. But all joking aside, think outside the box when you want to be able to get stuff to people. And if you can't give right away, maybe wait a week or two. Let's see some of the organizations get spun up and seeing the right way for everyone to donate and help out. Brendan, touching on that, when the last time Haiti got hit, did they come up with any kind of like innovative ways to get relief down there that you would know?
We've sent a lot of supplies to Haiti, just in the past as a family. The problem with that is, how do I say this and not be indictable? if you send it through legitimate means, their Border Patrol, Coast Guard, Customs, whatever you want to call them, will immediately confiscate it. And it'll be like, you send a 55-gallon drum full of canned food and kids' clothes. And it's like, we think this is drugs. Pay us $500 US for us to let it by. And so we had to find some interesting ways to get things down there and avoid that process.
Yeah. Brendan's got friends and family in Haiti. That's why I posed that question to him. We just got to be innovative. With that said, all right, tonight's topic has two major parts. One, in what scenarios do you relocate? Now we have non-SHTF, and then we have SHTF, examples. Then also, how do you determine what you want to put out in supply caches, and where do you do it? How do you diversify? How do you speak to people and have that conversation to make that happen? And how does it fit into your overall plan? So those are the two major topics for tonight. We're going to dive into, and we're going to, we'll dig a little bit deep. These recent episodes, I've been trying to dig deeper into particular topics versus having more depth instead of more breadth on a number of topics. So please, if you can, comment, ask a question, share some pertinent information. We love to hear and interact with you guys. All right. So we will start off with relocating for an emergency. So in this preparedness space, we think it's a meteor hits the ground, or a nuke goes off, or it's a 20-foot tsunami, coming and flooding our town. But those are on the probability. Let's see. Plausible. They're on the plausible spectrum, but not as probable as other things. So I like to start with non-SHCF. I had a friend of mine a couple years ago. She had a water softener at her house, and it started leaking, and the pipe connecting to it broke, and it flooded out her downstairs to the extent that they had to rip out all the flooring, cut X amount of drywall, put new flooring down, put all the trim and different things down, treat the concrete that's under there, and various other things, and Brendan can speak on that a little bit more in depth, what happens and why people can't and should not stay in the space. Now, luckily, she had the right pieces of homeowners insurance, because flooding is not just flooding. It depends on how the flooding happens, coming from the inside to outside. If you had the right riders or whatever, the policy attributes, it all makes a difference, where an insurance company said, oh, that's not our problem. So luckily she had the right set, and then they paid for her to go to a hotel with her kids. Now this is during the school year, so they added some frustration on. And then what are you going to do for meals? It's not like, unless you get like one of those days in kitchen suites with a little stove and a sink and a microwave, and it's got all the dishes and pots and pans in there, then you're just in a regular hotel room. What are you going to do? Eat out all the time? I don't think the insurance companies generally give out per diem where you can go to Outback every day, and Denny's for breakfast and what have you. So all those things factor in. And last year when we had Helene and Milton, a ton of people got flooded out. Flooring had to come out. They had to remove drywall up to the waist or 6 feet high. Some people tried to live
over the water line.
Yeah, and then some people tried to live in their houses. Maybe some by necessity, some by security, because they didn't want people to come in and loot their house. So why don't we start out with flooding? Okay. And Brendan, why don't you speak to it? Kind of what are some of the major things that occurs during flooding, and why you can't live in your house, or you shouldn't, and what's a general time frame, since you are in the business? Would someone be expected to be outside of their house when they're doing that kind of major renovation? And so people can have an idea, well, if this happens, I'm going to be out this much time. What are my options for relocating? Do I go to a friend's house? Do I camp out in my friend's backyard? Do I go get a hotel room, etc.?
So a couple of things on that. You mentioned the insurance policies a second ago, having the right insurance policy. Just as a quick note, general rule of thumb with that, if it comes from the sky, flood policies don't cover that. So if you have a hole in your roof, doesn't matter that the water raised up 6 foot and flooded out your house. If there's a hole in your roof, they're going to call that wind and rain damage, and flood policies won't accept it. And if it comes from the ground up, then it's flood damage. Again, with that caveat that flood policies will always tell you they'll want to tell you it's wind and rain. Wind and rain policies will always want to tell you it's flood, because they're happy to take your money, but nobody wants to pay you. Um, as far as like a relative timeline of how long you're going to be out, that's the kind of crappy part. Uh, Depends wildly on how much money you have on hand. If you are waiting on insurance companies, it could be a few months before you ever see a dollar for the insurance company. So if you have the money on hand and you can go get a hotel room or get work started right away, that's great. If you don't have the money, you're kind of at the mercy of the insurance companies, who, again, are always going to do their hardest to not pay you.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it depends on the damage. If it's something like you got a foot of flooding that just went in the front door, out the back door, well, then you cut the drywall up, rip out the insulation, put in the new, switch out your floors if you have a flooring material that's susceptible to that stuff, and then go about your business, a couple of weeks. If you've got total damage, you've got mold sitting behind the walls, you didn't gut the walls immediately. That was a big problem during Ian when we went down to Fort Myers. There was flood damage and people weren't immediately cutting out their walls, and it was sitting in there for a week or two. And then we rip open the walls, and rather than having 4 foot above the water line to cut, the entire walls had to come out because mold had just set in.
Did you find that a lot of people were living in the house with all that going on?
Most
brings a lot of potential health concerns.
Agreed. The quicker you act, the safer it is. You start gutting drywall and getting the insulation, all the wet stuff out immediately, and then going up a few foot above it. Then you've drastically lowered the chances of mold. Then staying in the house isn't that big a deal, other than you're living in a construction zone and kind of a mess. If you let it sit in there, you can cause some serious damage.
I wonder, so I'm just thinking outside the box here. So obviously you wait for an insurance company, you'll be waiting a long time. Now, if I'm sitting there going, you know what, I need to get this started, I call your business and say, hey, can you start doing this? You slap it on my credit card. And then 4 or 6 months later, insurance comes in. How does the insurance company, if you know, decide what they're going to pay and who you can hire to do it? Does it even factor?
It's usually determined by the policy. Document everything. Take 37 pictures of one item. Like, it's just, if you take one picture room to room, they're going to go, I don't see a whole lot of damage. You get X amount of money. If you have everything documented, like if you think you have enough documentation, double it. And then you hand that over, and it's some guy's job to go through every little bit. And it's as simple as that. As much as you can prove to them was messed up, there you go. And then some of them will come up with a number and just give you a number for the damage that they see fit. Usually they say it goes off of average rates and costs of things. Since COVID, their numbers are outdated in my experience. They're trying to pay pre-COVID prices on lumber and material and pre-COVID prices on contractors. So people aren't, if they're getting money, there's still people down in Fort Myers who have yet to receive insurance money from Ian. That was what, 3.5, 4 years ago, but, yeah, it's, insurance companies suck.
So then the key takeaways are document, and hop on it, at the very least, pulling all the wet stuff out and the moldy stuff
immediately,
regardless of what the insurance company is going to do. Otherwise, you're going to get sick. And then in the end, the insurance company is going to pay what they're going to pay. So it doesn't matter who you hire to do it. You're just figuring out, and you're just going to have to cover it. And then whatever you get reimbursed, you get reimbursed. But then you run into permitting. And
yes, which we've ran into problems with
yeah,
because never mind.
yeah, we know stories where the
Yeah,
permitting process by the county, not any particular county, is very slow going. When it comes to helping you, they're very quick when it comes to stopping you. You know, uh, if you know, you know, and we'll just leave it at that on that. So in this situation, you got to choose: do I bug in or do I bug out, and where do I go? So if you got the money to spend and there's contractors available, setting aside the permitting process, then you might be able to get it done pretty quickly. But then the permitting would be a snag, especially if it's storm related. So if it's not storm related and it's just normal times, stuff might be a little bit easier. Brendan, how under normal conditions, how long you think it takes to get permits to redo the flooring and some drywall in a
depends
house?
wildly between county to county. If you're in a city, it depends on so many different factors. I know if I wanted to do something in Polk County, and permit might be as simple if it's standard remodeling stuff, it might be as simple as going down to an office and scheduling a dude who maybe he'll be there next week. You know, if I'm in Pinellas County, I might be 3 or 4 months out. It depends so much from county to county.
Yeah.
And if you're in city limits, even more so, because now you're dealing with a whole different set of rules because so you've got general building codes, which is like nationally accepted. And then you've got each state adds their own, each county adds their own. Then you have city ordinances and yeah.
All right. So
Or
based
we
on
don't tell anybody.
what was that?
Oh, sorry. I said, or maybe we just don't. Yeah, not telling anybody.
Yeah. So well, I was gonna, based on what me and Brendan have just shared in the example, Aaron and Derek, you guys want to chime in and say you bug in, or you bug out?
So for me, at least, my dad was did disaster adjusting for insurance companies as a third party, and so my experience has been a little bit different. Those guys that are adjusters, like they can make quite a bit of money if they get out there and hustle. So it's actually in their best interest to write as many settlements as possible on a daily basis. Like they work from can-see to can't-see. Um, so with that, like going to your question, Dom, about bugging in and bugging out, my house turns 100 years old next year. So not its first flood, not its first hurricane, not even its 20th flood or hurricane. I have noticed in the last, when we had Milton and Helene, I did see some different flood patterns. That was mostly based on how things have changed in the little town that I live in, and how things may or may not have been updated, um, and what developers have gotten away with, but also how like organizations like SwiftMud may, change their parameters for what dams they open and what stuff they do. So to me, that's all part of your area study. Um, if you're looking at that from a disaster perspective, knowing what other people's plans and organizations' plans are during a disaster. Like I had a buddy of mine during, I think it was Milton, and he ended up having his very nice HVAC shop that's a multi-million-dollar business have chest-high water in the warehouse because SwiftMud didn't open up a certain gate. So it gets you a little steamy, especially when you consider that like there is not a single thing about HVAC anything that is cheap. Like they are real proud of all of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, they lost a good amount of money, but like if I'm looking at bugging out, unless I've left so early that, you know, I can afford to just pick up and go, you know, before anything's even getting ready to make landfall, I'm not leaving my house and my stuff unless it's for a very specific
Oh,
reason.
well,
It's,
here, let me put this back in context. So when I said about bugging in or bugging out, it wasn't like in general. It was specific to this example.
oh, okay.
So that's what we're going to do tonight. So as we're going over the
Yeah.
examples, bug in or bug out. So that's why I said, based on what me and Brendan were saying, you bug in or you bug out.
Yep. I stayed in Helene and I stayed in Milton. And I've stayed through just about every hurricane out there. So maybe that's just me being fortunate.
Well, it's more
but
about the after effects. So we
yeah,
were talking about the different types of flooding. So if your house gets flooded out, basically, and you got you know, your flooring is damaged, you got drywall X amount that got wet and moldy, you know. So we were going over scenarios. Okay, well, cut away the drywall right away, so you stop the damage from escalating. And
yeah,
then it's like you're basically living in the wreckage. Because for me,
yep,
I'd say you're bugging in because you know, even if you have, like, you could throw down a credit card to get someone in there during normal time, say, you know, water softener breaks, you're talking weeks and weeks, stuff to get scheduled, materials to get purchased, you know, getting a bid from a couple of different guys, then getting the permits. So if you're like, well, I'll just go to a hotel. Well, you might be in a hotel for a month for this whole process. So if you're not going to go back into your house until it's
yeah,
completely back to what you know, were before the flooding, then that's a big chunk of money in itself. So,
yeah. If we need to, I have friends and family to stay with. But specifically for flooding, like it takes a lot to push me off of my house just because with what I have and the skills that I've gotten over the years, like I feel like I have a better chance being on known ground and working all of this, you know, from that perspective of got all my stuff here. I know the area. I have a great network in the area. You know, I'm not as terribly concerned about it.
yeah. All right, Derek, bug in or bug out on that?
That's a good question. I'm kind of a hybrid between Bender and Aaron. In this particular situation, because we're just talking situation.
Flood damage. Yep.
Yeah, flood damage. If it's Cat 5, we're out. But for the after effect, I'm staying in. I'm staying in to do exactly what Bender said, and I'm staying in because just like Aaron said, we're Floridians. That's what we do. You know, we brave the storm. We chill. At least in Florida, you know, if you can't be exactly at home, maybe like Aaron said, move up to a family, then go right back down and do what Bender said. Immediately assess damage. Immediately get the bad stuff out and get ready to rebuild.
So, just as an anecdote, that's what I did after Milton. We went, grabbed the wife and the kids, went up to a brother's house a couple hours up north, and then the next morning after the storm, I left the wife and kids there. I came down, assessed, and immediately went to work and just start. Now I have the skill set to do so, but immediately started working on it. And, you know, we worked through the renovations, which, shoot, we still have some renovations to do, but the necessities are done.
Yeah, not to throw us off topic and not to throw you under, well, not to put you on the spot, brother, but maybe one of the videos I think people, especially me, right, might like to see is because you work a lot already in construction, Bender, and you already see houses that are needing renovation or repair or have been damaged or et cetera, doing a video of like, here's how you would rip out your wet drywall. You know, don't just take a sawzall and start ripping, you know, because use electric and there's piping and you could make things worse, but here's like an easy way to start ripping out and what to look for and things like that.
I had a new guy shove a sawzall into a wall one time and just went to cutting. I told him to remove drywall, and he proceeded to cut through 3 2x4s and a power power supply to an outlet.
Wow.
No bueno.
That sounds
That was an-
expensive.
That was an expensive
Yeah.
mess up. Yes.
You
And
know,
he paid for it.
well, another thing I just thought about, electrical. I mean, I don't know how high up off the floor electrical conduit and sockets are generally by, traditional specs,
A foot.
a foot. I mean, so if you got an electrical outlet so 2 feet of water, so that gets all your electrical outlets. Do those things dry out and still work, or
Depending on how old they are, how well they were installed. If it's just one of the little ones where you like stub the wires in through the back, I don't like those personally, but I mean they work most of the time. What we do is flip breakers off, make sure there's no water in it, and then leave all the power off for a couple of days to let it dry out. Because all it is connections. It's just copper and brass in there. So it's not like it's gonna, if there's no electricity running through it, it's just got to dry out.
So the consensus on, the flooding, whether it comes from the pipes or comes through the roof from damage, the takeaways for people would be, we didn't mention this, but I'm going to add it. Have tarps available in your house to be able to tarp your house.
That's a big one.
The consensus is we're going to bug in from flooding because economically it's not going to work for us to get out. So have tarps to tarp your house, have plywood to cover your broken windows, broken doorways, sliding glass doors, have brooms available to push out the water, have the appropriate tools to, what are the basic tools you need to cut drywall, Brendan?
A razor knife. You could do it with a razor knife and a pry bar. Get an oscillating saw to make your life super easy. But yeah, you could do it with a razor knife and a pry bar.
Yeah. And then the last thing would be turn the breakers off and let your electrical infrastructure dry out 2-3 days at least before you go and start testing. I'd probably say try one circuit at a time, and I'd probably try with I don't know, would you say start from the bottom up or top down?
It also depends on how long was it flooded. Is this water rushed through, or is this it sat underwater for 2 days? Because that also makes a giant difference. I wouldn't salvage any of that electricity.
Oh,
or
would the water start oxidizing? I don't know if I'm saying the right scientific term. The different connectors, maybe right away at the wires.
Yes, 100%. And when you have that oxidation on stuff, that's when you get hot spots, and that's when best case scenario, you burn out a neutral and nothing works now. Worst case scenario, it lights your house on fire, which is a whole nother set of problems.
Yeah. Oh, another thing would be your batteries, especially your lithium. I don't know if it's as much impacted with LiPo 4, but keep all your solar battery stuff, keep it way off the floor. Put it on a shelf somewhere. And if you got an electric car, I don't know, move it out of the floodplain. I mean, you can't do anything if your pipe broke in your house, but the water wouldn't get high enough from pipes breaking to get to your car, but it might get you a couple of feet in your house. Would you think, Brendan? If a room's caught?
I mean, if you're home, first off, everyone, if you live in a house, everyone should know where your main water shutoff is and your main breaker shutoff is. I don't know how many times I've been in old houses and a pipe has busted and it's just running and running and running until I get there. And why didn't you shut the water off? I don't know where the water shutoff is. And I walk outside and go, you see that big white pipe with the giant red knob on it? That's that. Oh, I always wondered what that was.
I'm going to add that to the list. Mark off all your water spigots. So, all right. The next topic, okay, would be fire. Now, depending on the fire damage, I'm just guessing. I've never experienced being in a house fire of any type, even like the stove catching fire or whatever. I'm thinking in most situations we're gonna, bug out because everything's gonna be burned up. But Aaron, you want to kick the fire topic off?
Yeah, that's definitely having a couple of places to move here locally. There's a couple of large water sources that I would probably head towards. Some nice water features in some suburbs. That's one that I don't stay for.
Yeah.
Get the people first, and anything else if we have time. But
Yeah.
there's 3 humans that live in this house, and their first
Yeah.
priority when it comes to fire.
Yeah.
So
Safety first on. I mean, most fires. I mean, again, unless it's like a little grease fire and you happen to have the right fire extinguisher or one of those fire blankets to put it out, your house is cooked, and it'll be cooked to the point where you can't live in it. So,
yeah.
I mean, you guys disagree?
Oh no,
I agree with you for the most part.
What was that, Aaron?
Go ahead, Brendan.
Go ahead. Aaron, you go ahead, and then we'll go to Brendan.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say that's with the fire stuff, like getting it to where you don't just have damage from the fire, you also have damage from whatever they use to put it out.
Mm.
And I've rehabbed a couple of fired houses, and like, dude, the amount of water that a couple of fire engines that hook up to a fire hydrant can dump on your house, and however many hours they take to decide to stop deluging all your possessions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also run into, like, everybody has the fire rated safes and stuff, but like, you also run into the issue of rapid heating and rapid cooling is not typically good for metal.
Yeah.
Or really anything. So if you have something that's burning at 1,000 degrees and then you dump a bunch of water on it and it suddenly cools, like, what are the chances that all your sensitive documents are going to be gone? The other thing though that I was thinking of too is, like, all preppers at least pay lip service to the idea of massive civil unrest and the zombie biker apocalypse horde, coming down the street. Even in relatively peaceful times, how many times have you guys seen riots and civil unrest exist without even a little bit of fire?
Yeah.
Like, there's just something about a group of people that are really pissed off that seem to love lighting stuff that's not theirs on fire. So that's another thing. I think, having at least some fire extinguishers strategically placed around the house is just smart. It's cheap
Yeah.
insurance.
You may not be able to save your house, but I would think that, obviously getting your family out is first, but if it's not a full rager and you're going to try to go and whether get your documents or, I don't know, some guys would probably try to go get their guns and ammo. I mean, to me, other than the documents, I wouldn't even take a risk. And that's just like, hey, it's not like fully engulfed at that point. The fire extinguisher would just be able to help you get to that and get out, maybe, depending. But you're going to have to be calm, cool, and collected for that and be able to funnel that adrenaline because, and you don't know where the fire is going. So I got to kind of like step back on that because that fire could be raging through the attic and you're not seeing it come through the ceiling. You might see a little smoke, but that may not sit there and show how fierce that fire is and how quickly it's moving and come behind you, and then you're trapped.
Yeah.
So I guess we should have an important documents go bag in a sense.
So that's what we do. We have fire extinguishers. I keep a fire blanket pinned in my kitchen at the entrance to my kitchen because if the stove is on fire, you can throw it over. But I don't want it directly in my kitchen because if the stove is on fire, I do not want to have to pass a fire to get to it. So it's at the doorway leading into my kitchen. My wife keeps a fireproof, fire rated bag. Aaron already mentioned the safes. I'll tell a little story about what fire rated safes do. But she keeps that. That's got all our, important documents, passports, house deed, things of that nature. Just all that stuff in one giant binder in a fireproof bag. And our SOP is if a fire breaks out, I live in a manufactured home. So there is no minor fire in my house. I catch a minor fire, the whole thing's gone in 10 minutes. Yeah. So my job is to get the children. Her job is to get that binder, and then we'll, get out the door. So fire rated safes are rated to keep fire out. What they are not rated to do is to keep temperature out. They turn into ovens. I had a buddy who went through a fire, got to his safe, opened it up. All the cash he had that was in there was just ashes. The guns that had wood furniture, the wood furniture was charcoal, literal, oxidized charcoal. And the rounds he had in there had all cooked off. It's a giant steel box. It's an oven at that point.
Yep.
It will not allow fire into it, but realistically, it's a false sense of security and a marketing ploy for a lot of companies.
Well, on that note too, all the fire ratings have a temperature and a time. So how long is that fire burning at what temperature? Because if you're rated for 30 minutes for 1,000 degrees and it's 2,500 for 15 minutes, does that math for you?
Yeah.
Well, based on what you were saying, Brendan, so the rounds cooked off, and if they're just, your standard brass, no big deal, right? Steel safe will probably keep them there, but what if it's like steel tip? Armor piercing?
On a thicker safe, you're probably okay, but I know for me, the vast majority of my ammo is not in a safe. If my place started cooking off, it's gonna look like Ukraine around my neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not gonna be good for anybody.
Yeah.
A lot of that though, a much younger and much dumber person that looked a lot like me, had kind of done a little bit of research and then some experimentation and found that in order to get velocity rounds have to be in a weapon, so that narrow tube called a barrel focuses it. And that much younger and dumber person who looked a lot like me got into a debate with a Marine about that. So there may have been some 9mm hollow points thrown into a campfire.
The shell casing becomes more dangerous than the actual bullet.
And they don't go far. They didn't actually make it out of the campfire, neither the shell nor the casing. That was Hornady critical defense. So, not saying anybody should do that. I said younger and dumber several times intentionally. But it's not that much of an issue until you start getting into I've got 40 pounds of powder here for reloading. That's terrifying.
That's my concern. Having a box of 9mm probably okay. Having a 40mm ammo can loaded to the brim with 7.62 by 39, we've just turned that into a preaching charge.
Yeah, these are good points because, and for preparedness, because the vast majority of us have X amount of various calibers of ammunition. Our reloaders have the gunpowder.
What was it? Brandon a few years ago. I think it was in Brandon. The guy had 8 pounds of smokeless pistol powder, and it detonated. And the pictures of that dude, split his roof in half, sent his roll down garage door across the street. It was devastation.
Wow.
Something that you can buy in one jug.
Whew. Well, then you add in how many people have gasoline in their garage, at least for a lawnmower, where we would have more if we were stockpiling.
Store it outside
Yeah.
or away from the residence.
Yeah, propane tanks. And if you're someone that builds a lot of things, then you got probably lots of paint and paint thinner and stuff like that. You got a lot of power tools. Those all have lithium batteries in them. And then if you're into solar stuff, you got solar batteries laying around. So us in this space, we exponentially have more items that are subject to being cooked in a fire that makes it so much more dangerous. So as preparedness people, we need to really kind of dig deep into that and maybe rethink a lot of how we're storing stuff. Obviously, a lot of stuff we want to store in a cool, dry place. That means in a closet. But if your house is cooking off and your odds are you're outside in the street and the rounds start popping off, even if it's not in a barrel, they're probably going to go somewhere, right?
So I have a buddy who did this, and I think it's a wonderful idea. And I've said for years I'm gonna do this, but I just haven't. He lives off grid, so he knows if a fire happens, he's losing his house. There's no chance of the fire department getting there. He's so far away from civilization. Yeah, but he kept a 55-gallon drum in his yard, sealed up, that had a couple of changes of clothes. He kept $1,000 cash in it, and then a couple other items one would want around. And his thought process is, if I run out at 2:00 in the morning and me and the wife are in nothing but our PJs, couple bucks for a hotel room for a couple days to assess, have a change of clothes, have something on you that isn't cooking off in the fire.
Yeah.
And that was something that he did. I wanted to do it. I got a bunch of small kids. My kids aren't going to fit their clothes in 6 months, and I really don't feel like changing out a barrel every 6 months. Realistically, it'd probably be better to do it and then just have them wear tight clothes if that happened, if I did forget. But
yeah, I mean, and clothes and stuff, those are things that you can get after the fact.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that idea. Maybe if you didn't want to do a 55-gallon drum, you could sit there and put all your stuff, seal it in Mylar, throw it in a plastic bucket, and bury it in your backyard. Because that barrel, I mean, that's a big hole you'd have to dig to put that in. That's a lot of effort.
So with him, he's out. It's just sitting a few hundred yards away from his house. It's not buried, but
which most people are just like, oh, it's some abandoned barrel. They're not going to look at it,
if you made it that close to his property, you've done a lot of trespassing.
Derek, you got anything to add?
No, not really. I think you guys hit the nail on the head, man. There's no such thing as a fireproof safe. If the house is engulfed, you're going to lose it. You also have to think of things like if you're anywhere near any significant amount of woods and a forest fire happens, just like in California, it's all gone. There's nothing that's going to save that. I guess my rule of thumb is if it's important enough for you to grab, it belongs in a go bag or some sort of bug out bin or bag that everyone in the family knows to grab and run. Yeah, I mean, really, safes are just designed to keep the little ones out of your stuff. You know what I mean? That's about it.
Yeah. So the takeaways on the fire is you're bugging out because everything's getting cooked. You need to get your people out, number one. Number two, have your little go bag of documents and cash, because you can always get a ride to Walmart, get some cheap clothes to throw on you. Somebody will come, bring you, take care of the family, got friends and relatives and stuff. Someone go to the store and just get away. One interesting thing is for us, because of the ammo and the different things that we collect, if a structure fire happens and then all your rounds are cooking off, for example, or you got some, what is it? What's that poor man's little explosive? Tannerite.
Tannerite, yeah.
You know,
So,
but just
so Tannerite doesn't ignite by flame or spark.
oh, okay, so that's good.
Yeah.
So if a whole bunch of rounds cook off, I wonder if there's a floor where the ATF gets involved because shots fired. You know,
You're already going to have as soon as somebody calls in for a house fire, police are showing up anyway.
Yeah.
I highly doubt it would make it to ATF because cops are just going to go, okay, there's rounds in the house cooking off. But if you are close enough that a cooking off round is going to injure you, you're probably close enough that the fire is still a threat to you.
Yeah.
Like realistically, the amount of heat that would have to cook off a round, I don't think a human's surviving that.
Right.
At least not for very long.
Well, I'm thinking in the context so that we get out and the police show up and the firemen are there. I think, I don't know what the legal ramifications are, but I think it would be in good character for us to go, hey, I have ammunition in the house.
Yeah.
These rounds might cook off because I don't know if that changes the protocols for the firemen.
It
absolutely does.
I think it depends wildly on who's getting where and when. So, like, you live in a block home, right?
Yeah,
so,
first floor is anyways.
Right. So if they get there and you're not fully engulfed, let them know, and then they will adjust accordingly. By the time anyone gets to me, I'm standing over a pile of coals. You know, it's just, it is what it is. Again, manufactured home, this thing's going to go up like a tinderbox if it does.
Yeah.
B, if I called them and the flame was the size of a match head, by the time somebody would be able to get out to me, it'd still be over with.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think how far the nearest fire department is for you.
From me?
Yeah.
In my county?
Like
not
from your...
Because I'm very close to a county line. There is another firehouse just over the county line. I don't know if that gets called out statewide or if that's a county by county thing. I don't have that experience with fire departments, EMS, things like that. But the closest one in my county is about a 15-minute drive, 12-minute drive.
Yeah. And that's a lot of turns.
This one's
dark night.
2 turns. Yeah.
2 turns. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do have the experience with firefighters, and like one of the things that I've noticed that a lot of people don't take into account when I've been doing all this medical training, one of the things that's repeatedly emphasized to us is first responders, EMS, paramedics are not entering the scene until they've been told that it's not a tactical situation anymore.
Yeah.
So if you have a bunch of firefighters, what's probably more likely to happen if it sounds like Mogadishu just came to the neighborhood, it's a little bit more likely probably for them to make a cordon, keep everybody back off at a safe distance, evacuate any of your neighbors that might be affected, and just sit there until the popping stops. And then dump every bit of water they can get their hands on all on that.
Yeah.
So
now,
like
sorry, go ahead.
No, that was pretty much it.
Now, something that would affect my area more so than your area, Dom, is we're surrounded by woods. Now, I generally, because of, the thought of forest fires, and not that they're super common out here because Florida's a pretty wet state, but they do happen on occasion. I keep everything around my house. Like I have one tree that is relatively close to my house. I keep the trees backed off, 40, 50 yards, and everything 6 foot and under I cut. So any trees that are within 40 yards of my house, I'm trimming them 6 foot off the ground, because that's how fire spreads a lot of the time, is through the underbrush and whatnot,
Right.
and keeping that all cleaned up. Now, don't get me wrong, you get a big enough fire, sure, ash and coal and stuff like that's going to skip over fire breaks and things like that. But
Yeah.
so, like a fire at your property is going to look a heck of a lot different than a fire at my property. Although I am confident fire and EMS isn't going to get to my house in a timely enough manner to save my house, I'm still calling them, because my neighbors would be at risk, because if that starts burning through the woods and makes it all the way over to theirs, now they have a problem,
Yep.
I have secondary ignition sources all around. Just you get that by living in the woods,
Yeah. All right, here, let's jump to some questions or comments. Let's see here. Devo said, I'm in a manufactured home. Fire department is 4 miles from me. Obviously, no hydrants. The pressure on my well won't help. I was told get as far away as possible. Yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about whether the water pressure on a well would be sufficient to do much of anything.
Yeah. Maybe if it's a small, like a brush fire, you had a bonfire in the backyard and it got a little out of hand. Sure, maybe your hose can help that. Like I said, small kitchen fires, we should have extinguishers and fire blankets. The fire blankets are, relatively speaking, so cheap to get, and you can hang them everywhere. I like them over fire extinguishers, mostly because they don't expire. I have had fire extinguishers lose pressure on me because they were outdated, and I discovered that during when I needed one, which isn't a good thing. Thankfully, everything was okay with that. We were able to put it out with shovels, but I like the fire blankets because they never expire. But on top of that, my children can use them.
Yeah.
It's so idiot proof. So the ones I have, they're in a little red bag, and it's got a Velcro bottom with 2 straps hanging out. And you just literally grab one of those straps, pull it down, and it just falls out of the bag. Open it up, throw it over the fire, smother the fire. It's going to work for a grease fire. It's going to work for a wood fire. It'll work for that. Now, if it's an electrical fire, it's behind a wall, it's useless. Most stuff is useless at that point.
Yep.
So don't have sketchy wiring. And we live in Florida. I've seen a lot of sketchy wiring. I have seen people cut the heads off of extension cords, wire them into an outlet, and then stretch that over to a fan. And it's like, look, it's already at the outlet. Just plug it into the outlet. But they wanted a third use for the outlet because, multi-strips don't exist, I guess.
Yeah. You couldn't spend the $2 to get the 3-plug adapter from Walmart.
Yeah.
All right, here's another comment is this is from Nate. ATF is only getting involved if you have large amounts of powder improperly stored illegal items. All right. And I would think, I'm guessing here, I don't know what the protocol is, but if you got rounds popping off, I wonder if that triggers the fire marshal to do a certain kind of assessment to make sure there's not any other kind of ordinance in the house or there's other rounds that they got to dispose of. Because if a house burns down, what happens to all the debris, basically?
I just thought about something. Again, real quick to touch on what you just asked. The debris thing, again, goes county to county. Some counties, they just leave it up to the homeowner. And it's like you can pick through whatever rubble you want. Some will, bulldoze it into a pile. It's more common that they leave that up to you because they're not going to do any extra work if they don't have to. But touching on what Nate said, just thinking about it, a lot of the NFA items and things of that nature and things that require explosive licenses, and I know after a certain poundage, powder legally is supposed to be stored in what they call a magazine, which most people just use a metal ammo can. You're adding a pressurized outside now. You've turned powder into a bomb in the case of a house fire.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, let's see what other ones we got here. We got some great comments tonight. Let's see. All right. Another one from Nate. How many folks store gasoline in their garage? Even a small amount of gas is a large fire.
Yep.
I would think by and large, with guys that have, your average Joe in suburbia that has a gas-powered lawnmower and edger and stuff, they probably have like a 2.5 gallon gas tank they sit in their garage. Now that's probably more than enough, depending on how much is in there. But the fact that it's in your gasoline, now does it make a difference? Say I just filled up my lawnmower, so my can's empty, but then the fire cooks the lawnmower. Does it matter if it's in the tank or not?
A lot of those tanks are just made out of plastic. Plastic's going to melt. Gasoline's going to spill. That's going to happen. If you have a slap full can of gasoline, as funny as it sounds, that's less dangerous than a partially full can of gasoline because the fumes, gasoline itself is flammable. It's not explosive. The fumes get into the explosive territory.
Ah, okay. Well, this is one thing I've had to deal with because, I keep quite a few empty gas cans, around for, emergencies because we've had shortages before, especially during hurricanes. And I think, Brendan, you and I have had a couple conversations. How do I store this stuff outside? And I kind of was thinking about the same solution we talked about to put the generator out so no one could just walk away with it. And you had mentioned filling up like a 5-gallon bucket with Quickcrete and a bar and
just a piece of rebar bent into a U, and you bury that, and then you can just chain your stuff to that. I know a guy who did that because he was nervous that his generator was going to walk away in the middle of the night. He and I were talking. I think it was Hurricane Michael. We had heard a story. The guy went to bed with his generator running, and he woke up and he could hear what he thought was his generator running, but his power was off. And when he went outside, somebody had started a push mower and just zip tied the handle. So the generator shutting off didn't wake him up.
Oh.
And so he was like, well, shoot, I don't want that to happen. So he literally just buried a 5-gallon bucket, bent a piece of rebar into a U, filled it up with concrete, put a little soil over the top of the 5-gallon bucket. And then that's what he chains his generator to in the backyard.
Yeah. Do you think you really have to bury it? Could you just leave it on top?
I mean,
it's probably better if you bury
pound
it.
Of concrete sucks, but if you're willing to run off with a generator, you can probably throw an 80-pound, and especially larger generators that have wheels on them. Yeah.
Well, you definitely got to have more people. It's because I've gamed this out. You need someone to move that bucket. How much would a 5-gallon bucket full of Quickcrete weigh? Because I don't know if the ratio is like water is 8 pounds.
I could at least get an 80-pound bag in there, maybe a little more.
Yeah. So all these things are to deter or make it as difficult as possible from people just walking away with your stuff, or make them make as much noise as possible. For me, I think I would sit there and just store my generator at night and only have it out during the day, still secured. So then I can kind of eyeball it periodically, not give them a lot of time. But everyone's in a different situation. One of the reasons I have solar gear is so I don't have to run a generator at night. I can run it during the day if I can't, use my panels or what have you.
So we did the opposite. during Milton, my generator ended up underwater. So Dom was gracious enough to loan me his. And we ran it at night just so we could have some fans going and things like that. I had my freezers hooked up to it because the freezers were running off solar for the first week and then a little over a week. But I had depleted the batteries. And so we ran it at night. But what I did is I backed my truck up and I changed your generator to my axle on my truck.
Oh.
Because you're not getting through that. And this wasn't a chain that you could hit. If you have a chain that bolt cutters can get through, you don't have a chain. It's too small.
Yeah, a lot of different layers. That's pretty good. Plus the amount of noise they would make to try to cut through that or steal your truck.
You need an angle grinder or hacksaw and a heck of a lot of time.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Devo makes a good point. Families with kids should train evacuation from the house, and this goes for any situation.
That is
fire being the number one. Yeah.
That once or twice a year, I will just randomly. I give the wife a heads up. I don't give the kids a heads up, and I will just flip the main breaker and just start. Hey, fire drill, fire drill, fire drill. The wife is to grab my son. The 14-year-old grabs the baby, which she's not a baby anymore, but she's our baby. I'm sorry, other way around. I grab the son. I'm failing my own test. I grab the son. Samaya grabs the baby, and then DJ grabs the important documents folder. Mm-hmm. And then we get out to the street. And then I time it. First time we did it, it was better than I expected, but it wasn't great. But I also don't. So, there's so much research done on, applying a tourniquet. How long do you have before you bleed out? Mm-hmm. General rule of thumb is you want it on 60 to 90 seconds at most. I don't know how long you have in a house fire, and especially, is it a house fire that you are there when it's kicking off, or is it a house fire that happened at 1 o'clock in the morning and you're waking up and there's already 2 foot of smoke on your ceiling? That makes a whole heck of a lot of difference. I don't know. Do you have 2 minutes? Do you have 10 minutes? I don't know.
Well, Deanna makes a good point that I want to add on to. So she's like, should have a designated meetup spot so you know where everyone made it out of the house. Now, depending on how their house is laid out, okay, so even though you're practicing, Brendan, if your house is set up a certain way where some people go out one way because the fire is in between you, or they just boom. It's not like everyone's going to run to the front door or have that option.
So we have those little fire ladders staged at our main bedroom window. And then the kids have an area where they could get out their window if need be. The front door obviously would be the preferred option, but the way my house is set up, it's very likely that we could get cut off from the front door. So the window would definitely be options in our case. The thing that would suck there is now I have to cross some electric fence and some barbed wire to get to the front yard.
Yeah. All right. So let's see what these other ones before we move on. Oh, one thing I was thinking about, especially for the people with the rural properties, since your well won't have the water pressure, if you have the space, maybe making a DIY water tower and stuff, even if it's like one of those totes, because that holds what, like 250 gallons? 275.
Southern Prepper 1 did that. He made his, what he called his redneck fire truck, and it's a flatbed truck with two 275-gallon IBC totes and an electric pump on it. And that was his,
Yeah, because I was wondering if you could stage those near the structures that are important to you. What size pump would you need to be able to put a decent pressure on, at least to try to do something?
Again, depends wildly
and how would you run it?
I don't know
how he's running it.
So his, I think, directly rigged into the truck. So if the truck's running, it's powering the pump.
Okay.
And, if you've got a 2-inch hose on it, sure, you could put out a lot of water quickly, but 500 gallons, man, like, how big's the fire? Are you trying to put out an already engulfed house, or are you just trying to put out your kitchen countertops and cabinets? It's a big difference there. It's a whole lot of ifs, and I really hate dealing in ifs.
Oh, we got some more comments. Let's see. All right. Nate said, ammo popping off happens in most house fires. When there is a boom, things change. That makes sense. And then a proper powder magazine has no top. It also has a minimum safe distance away from structures. There are federal regulations for powder storage. So no top. I wonder what he means. I mean, no lid.
I'm assuming, exactly
No
what I was
lid.
talking about earlier, where you've now created a pressurized thing. It seems that they've thought of that.
Yeah, blasts follow the path of least resistance. So if you give a blast some resistance on 3 or 4 sides, and you leave the 5th one open, that's where it's going to go faster.
Okay. And then he said an 80-pound bag of concrete makes 80 pounds of concrete. The water weight is not added. Oh, okay. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, and then let's see. Mountain Natural Prep Station said you don't have a lot of time, max 2 minutes, but try for less. I think
That's usually what we rough.
Yeah.
Because my assumption is at 10 minutes, the house is completely engulfed at that point.
Yeah.
So.
I think if people are not doing practice runs, start at 2 minutes and work your way down, 2 minutes or less. And if you got the people and you got your little document go bag, that's it. Everything else is replaceable. And in your document go bag, if you have digital copies for all that stuff, that'll suffice for most things. You can always go get other birth certificates, other social security cards. At least you have the digital ones would cover most things. You'll just lose your credit cards, basically. Make sure your car keys, stuff that it's like you can still function with what has survived. If you're thinking about what goes in that bag. All right.
So one of the things that I wanted to touch on earlier, I keep a small jump drive at a few of my friends' houses that are no closer than about 30 minutes away from me. And it's encrypted, and it has stuff like the deed to my house, birth certificates, scans of social security card, driver's license, things like that. Basically everything that I could have an electronic copy of to reestablish my identity if I end up getting blown out of my home base.
Yeah.
Because if I have to make a choice between, getting my wife and daughter out and grabbing a go bag, it's no choice.
Yeah.
So along with something like just grabbing a cell phone and having one of those digital wallets setting up, like I believe you were just saying, like that's at least a solid base that doesn't take up much space and it's quick to get a hold of.
Yeah. Well, something that is not life-threatening and not drastic, but is something that happens more often than we like to admit, would be pest infestations, where you literally have to tent your house. Have any of you guys ever experienced that or know somebody?
Yeah, when I was living out in Tampa, we got tented for termites.
And what was that process like? So obviously you can't be in there when they're tenting it, but
yeah,
talking 2-day thing, 3-day thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Get out all the food, get out all your animals. They tent the place. I think from leaving to being back in was maybe 3 days apart, and stinks like hell for a couple of days, and you leave all your windows open and fans blowing out. And then, a couple days.
All right. So how would you say, well, before I ask that question, Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to add to what he was saying? No, Derek? Okay. So if we put it in the preparedness perspective, we have a lot of our, mid to long-term food is, if you've done it right, it's sealed in Mylar, in buckets. Now, if you got like boxes of pasta that's from the shelf and you just put them on your pantry, you got to pull that out. But what do you do about your Mylar stuff and in buckets? Would you
That's
pull that
probably
stuff
fine.
out too?
It's
Huh?
probably fine. For me, most of my stuff isn't stored inside my home, so wouldn't be a concern where I'm at. But if it's in a sealed Mylar bag inside a plastic 5-gallon bucket, it's probably fine. That's enough layers that I'd be comfortable eating it.
Yeah. So I guess the takeaways from this would be it's a temporary relocation. You kind of got to pull at least your foodstuffs if you're being cautious. And then when you go back into your house, you're wiping down or washing everything else. So you might be able to go stay with a friend or family or go to a hotel for a couple of days. So you're really just doing a low-key bug out for a couple of days. Probably no more than if you're evacuating for a hurricane and then coming back. So I don't think there's a whole lot of pre-planning you got to do for that. Other than where do you put your stuff? Like you pulling all your food out, but if you got a year's supply of food, staged properly, sealed and everything in your house, what are you going to do? And if you got water, you might as well dump that water. And then after the tenting, wash it out and restock. So just find a temporary relocation for your stuff. So I think that'll work out for most people. All right. So now, so we got some other types of, and I'll throw these out and you guys can speak on them if you want to. Okay. You get evicted from your place. Let's see. Get separated or divorced. Okay. From your partner. Those are the non-violent ones. Now, the violence ones are home invasion and doxing or threats on self and family. So the home invasion aspect is more psychological than the physical, in the sense, if you've ever been victim to a robbery, especially in your home, it could be a very traumatizing experience. Maybe not as much for us because the way our brains are working now, we're always looking for the zombies coming down the road. But your normies out there, boom, they someone breaks in their house, especially if they commit violence on the people that live there. Psychologically, they might not be able to continue living there or need a break from the home. And now in this day and age where everyone gets triggered by something, they instantly want to go and get somebody canceled, fired. They want to dox them where their home is. That causes a lot of chaos for people because people just don't know how to behave. So out of eviction, separation, divorce, home invasion, or doxing and threats on self and family, Aaron, you want to pick one and give some thoughts about it? In the sense of, do you bug in or you bug out? Not so much that what you would do per se, you can mention that, but give your rationale. Like from the preparedness person's perspective and a normie. Keep that in context.
Yeah, so I'd also like to add one to that, and that's domestic violence allegations.
Yes.
SOPs for most police officers and sheriff's offices and everything is to remove one party from the scene. Mm-hmm. So at least when they go there, they can say, "Hey, we got this done." But if you have a domestic violence claim against you, there are some circumstances where your gun could be confiscated. And that's an emergency protective order might be able to happen. Not saying that it's wrong every time, just that it's something that seems to have a fairly low bar of proof in our country right now.
Yeah.
Sometimes the accusation is worse than the act.
Yeah.
So, from a normie's perspective, all of those things are the sort of terrifying things that, that they make horror movies about people doing home invasions.
Yeah.
And it's that sense of helplessness, that sense of fear.
Mhm.
When you decide to take matters into your own hands and you decide to become self-reliant and say, no, most likely first responders will be here long after anything that they could do for me will be, effect or will be happening in the moment. Meaning,
When
like, it doesn't
seconds
take that long
matter,
to
the
pull the
police are only
push.
minutes away.
Yeah, yeah. So, there are certain circumstances that I would bug out, um, in a home invasion scenario. Um, I may decide to get my wife and child out of the house.
Yeah.
And that would be, most likely my number one priority. They can have anything that's stuff in my house because I can get more stuff.
Yeah.
People are very hard to replace.
Yeah.
So, and that may be as simple as retreating from the main area and telling anybody that comes through the bedroom door, hey, unless you've got a badge on, your next step's going to be in the next world.
Yeah.
So just don't open the door. You can take the TV, you can take the Xbox. Like, you're welcome to it all.
Oh yeah. Well, it might help people out psychologically, especially like, in our case, we have young children. So whether we're there or not, maybe it's better for the children to be out of the house until we do the repairs. Get the door back on the hinges, fix the windows, to get it back as much as possible to pre-home invasion or incident. So the kids aren't sitting there going, "Oh, why is the window broken, Daddy?" Now you're like, okay, I have to lie to my kid and say they weren't there. Oh, a bird flew through the window. Daddy's got to fix that. But if they were there, they know something bad happened. What do y'all think about that?
So, to touch on what Aaron mentioned earlier with the domestic violence, I had a friend call me up, ask me to go meet him at his sister's house to give him a hand. There was an incident with her and her husband. She served him divorce papers. He decided he was going to drive the truck through the garage into the house and try and pin her between the wall. Thankfully, he didn't. She's perfectly fine. He was removed from the situation. But now, the room he hit was their son's room. She, for exactly what you're referring to, chose to let the son stay with, oh, you're going to go stay with Aunt so-and-so for a couple of days and have a good vacation. And me and him went over there. We rebuilt the wall, repainted the room, did all the things. So that way, when he came home, she chose to play it off as, we remodeled your room, surprise.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want that trauma with him being as young as he was. He was conscious, but he was maybe 8 or 9. He wasn't, so it would have been a very rough age.
Yeah.
If you've got infants, probably never going to remember it. If you've got that real impressionable age, that could definitely be a dilemma.
Yeah. Derek, you got anything on that home invasion?
Muted, sorry. I'm gonna be honest, guys. We're blasting. We're sending rounds to the wall. We're just mag dumping it, boys.
Yeah.
But no, but really, I said it before on this live stream. I'll say it again. I do not envy you men who have kids, because priorities are them first, and priorities shift in that direction immediately. So in the case of you guys, I'm sure everything from especially muzzle discipline and on, right, are such a huge factor in your guys' prep and defense of the home and homestead. I do not have that problem. In fact, a very good brother, Bender, and I were just discussing this a few days ago about people coming onto the property and on the homestead, and I totally understand and love his take. My thoughts are a little different. If you've come through my gates, through my fences, and come to my house, and you are on my porch and trying to get into my door, that's that. To quote Bender, that's a decision you made. So I'll leave it at that. I don't have kids to worry about, so back to my first joke, I'm sending rounds through the wall, and a lot of them. So,
well, it's a great point. We do talk a lot about over penetration, and there's a lot of million videos out there about what's the best home invasion, defense weapon, shotgun, AR, AK, pistol, a machete. I mean, if you're in an HOA community and your neighbors are 10, 15 feet.
So
okay.
for me, my bedside gun used to be an AK. My wife's bedside gun is and still is an AR. I have switched my gun a couple of times because of that thought process. The way my house is laid out, if someone kicks in my front door and they make it past my living room, they are now in between me and my children. My children become the backstop. I do not want to be shooting any rifle with my children as the backstop.
Yeah.
I don't want to be shooting anything with my children as the backstop. Point blank. But switched over to a 12 gauge, thought buckshot for a while, then did some backyard testing with a couple of sheets of drywall and some 2x4s. And yeah, no, I mean, drywall is concealment. It's not cover. And honestly, even for a 22 makes it through a lot of drywall as well. But my current bedside gun is a 22 with a 25 round magazine and a giant strobe light on the front of it, because that is the
raves are cool, man.
Yeah.
Raves are cool.
That is the best option I have at hand until my children are either no longer in those rooms or no longer in the house. Now, if I had no kids, my bedside gun would be an AK again. Just simple as that. Now, the reason my wife's bedside gun is an AR is because Aaron pretty much laid it out earlier. That is my plan. I am to give my wife cover while she makes it to the kids, and then her and the kids will go to a predetermined location in the house. Mm-hmm. My wife will cover the door. I will cover the front door. And if you want to steal the trucks, steal any of the tools in the shed, for me, have at it. The second you come through that front door, you have made a decision.
Yeah. Well, the number of kids that you have and their ages makes such a big difference. I know when my kids were smaller, one of the things that motivated me to learn, to train in Krav Maga, I haven't done it in quite a few years. My thinking was, hey, I need to be able to go get my kids quickly, and I need to have my hands for my kids to get them back. But if I'm able to get, my oldest daughter to get her sisters and go to daddy's room, kind of doing that simultaneously, it was kind of flawed, the idea. Then at least I could sit there and get them going. Now that they're older, it's kind of shifted to where it's like, I need to have two weapons present, one for me. I go to meet my kids, and the second one goes to my oldest, because she's got to be able to be that last line of defense if I fail at my mission.
I think that's a great point, Dom, there to touch on that, is the kids need to know what to do too. Kids are very curious, and curiosity killed the cat. And it's one of those things where they have to, home invasions are very dynamic and very kinetic. And so they need to know what that kind of not normal sounds like and start stacking plates, to use a phrase, if you will. Getting on the floor, getting as low as humanly possible, putting as much cover between them and everything else as humanly possible. If Like Junior has a 22. I'm sure he's sitting in the corner ready to go. You know what I mean?
So that's something I wanted to bring up. That absolutely horrifies me. So because of the nature of the things I do, I leave my home for periods of time regularly. And one of the things that I do every time before I leave is I sit down with my son. Hey, dude, you're the man of the house. If your mother needs something, it is your responsibility to take care of your mother. It is your responsibility to take care of your sisters. Now, mind you, he's 7, so he's helping. But I want to instill that, toxic masculinity we've all been hearing about. Because, like it or not, biblical manhood's a thing. And one of the things that scares the ever-loving crap out of me is something's going to happen and my 7-year-old son's going to grab his 22 and think he's going to save the day rather than go to the predetermined location like we said. Because I see it already. We'll be out in the woods and come across a rattlesnake and he's like, "Oh, Dad, I can grab it." "No, you can't. Stop that." He's a little too gung-ho at times.
Well, you know what? That brings up a good point. So, you've introduced, proper utilization of firearms, okay, to your family, okay, at the appropriate age that you felt it was worth doing, right? But the thing that's different is that so much of our society is sheltered from firearms, and we deal with the fear of firearms, okay, and the lack of respect of firearms by too many people, especially young people, in our world, where even maybe 100 years ago, a 7 or 8 year old had a 22 and was shooting squirrels and rabbits. And go another 50 years before that, I mean, how young were these kids sitting there learning how to shoot?
You can find videos on YouTube today of little African pygmy children at 4 years old climbing trees with machetes in their teeth.
Just different tool. And why? And reason
I know people who don't let their teenagers carry knives. It's like me and Derek went out into the woods with my son a few weeks ago. My son kept a 22 Magnum revolver on his hip the whole time because snakes are a thing. Now, that being said, he has spent literal years having gun safety drilled into him. He has gone out and trained with the thing. He can smoke a golf ball at 10, 15 yards with that 22, no problem.
And speaking on that, to not to cut you off, Bender, I watched him the entire time I was there, very curious to see how well, because he's young. And I know when I was young, because guns weren't allowed in my house, I was always curious. Anytime I could get my hands on one, absolutely, you bet your butt, I would grab that thing and knowing just because it was a mystical thing. Junior didn't touch it. It stayed on his hip, and he respected it like the tool it is.
I think that goes to exactly what you were saying. It's when you don't have exposure, things become a curiosity. If it's just another tool, like my son wouldn't, well, he's my son, so yeah, maybe he would, but like he wouldn't walk around and pick up every hammer he sees because it's just another tool, So guns aren't the curiosity. He understands it's a tool for a job. When you tell a kid, "Oh no, this is bad, never touch it, never," well, oh, Mom and Dad's not home, let me go look at it and play with it. And that's when accidents happen,
Yep. I mean, how many stories have we seen or heard about where two boys were playing around with one of their parents' guns, okay, and shot the other one in the face or the head?
Yep.
And that's because it was lack of training, lack of respect. Just because a parent has it in the household and they lock it up somewhere, supposedly, that doesn't mean that kid ain't going to figure out how to get in there.
Or something as simple of attempting. Maybe it's on top of a shelf and they try and crawl up there, grab a shirt, and it falls and goes off. Yeah. a very real thing, you know, and that's not even them necessarily playing with it. It's just the fact that it happens.
You know, for me, for the longest time, I didn't even want my kids to use a butter knife. Okay. And then I let them do it. Just, you know, because my mindset is that with children, even some adults, they get caught up in conversation, you know, they're cutting stuff, and then either they're not watching what they're doing, and then they're slicing a finger, or kids being kids and they say something to the other one, no, you're stupid. And then they push each other or throw something, and then next thing you know, they're cutting their finger off.
So my wife has instituted all our kids have their own kitchen equipment because as all of you guys have experienced, my wife loves to cook, and she's teaching my kids to cook as well. And so she went and got them these kid-safe kitchen knives, and it looks just like a regular set of knives, other than they're neon orange, but it's plastic and serrated, so it will cut through produce, it will cut through meat, it will cut through all that stuff, but it's not going to fillet your hand. Now, don't get me wrong, if you slip, I'm sure you're going to get a cut, but you're not lopping a finger off.
Yeah. And, you know, I bring that example up is because, you know, for me as a parent, well, if I want my kids to sit there and not cut their fingers off, one, I got to teach them to respect the knife and not to fool around when you're using the knife, which is what I try to do. You apply the same thing to the firearms, you know, or cooking on the stove. That's another thing. It's the same reasoning. Kids will be sitting there moving or bumping each other, and, you know, you're stupid. No. Next thing you know, you got grease all over the place. Kids are burning or catches something on fire.
Been to my house.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Let's see here. All right. So I think we touched on enough of those topics. We're already at 132. And I'm glad this filled out. I think this was a great conversation. And we didn't even get into the SHTF examples, but we talk about that stuff on other podcasts and everything, and we could always revisit it. But I want to touch base on supply cache management. Okay. And what I mean by that is, okay, what is a supply cache and how do you sit there and manage it? So in the prepper space, okay, there's always discussions about, hey, how much food should I put back, or how much supplies should I put back? You need a year's supply of this and X amount of months of that, and blah, blah, blah. Then you got, okay, well, I only can fit X amount in my house. There's all kinds of different things. Well, what good is you having a year's supply of food if your house burns down? Okay. So just like any investment, because that's what your year's supply of food is, okay, is to diversify its locations. Now, to do that, obviously you need to prepare it just like you would have it on your house, but then you need to have other locations. Well, friends, family, I'm not talking about going out and rent a storage, which is sky high prices. Plus you'd need one that was climate controlled, and who knows if you can access it if the power goes out or what have you. But your best bet is to be friendly with your friends and family and maybe squirrel out a portion of a closet or something where it's, you know, cool and dark. And so instead of having the whole year in, you break it up in quarters and see if you can break it up with 3 different people.
So
you can bury some in your backyard, but, you know, if you got to bug out, so that works good from your house burning down. But if you got to bug out for whatever reason, temporarily or for long term, all your supplies, you know, are not available if you don't have them in other places.
So me and the wife are actually auditing this particular topic right now. And we've come up with a game plan that we're going to start instituting this coming month. I have, just by, again, nature of the stuff that I do, I have small caches all over the freaking country because I have people all over the country. I understand that not everybody can do that. Not everybody has the access to do that. I mean, you could, but, you know, it takes time to build relationships and things like that.
Yeah.
all my caches at the moment are, you know, a few days of MREs, a little bit of medical, basic medical, and then like a change of clothes with a couple extra pairs of socks. It's, hey, I'm driving a 20-hour drive. Can I stay at your house for the night rather than get a hotel and then rotate there? So one of the things me and the wife decided we're going to start instituting is picking 3 or 4 locations that make reasonable sense. And I say that specifically, which I'll touch on in a second. And our plan is to put 120 days of food, because that's what I ask people. If you plan on coming to my place, I ask people put 120 days of food and a shelter. Be it, I don't care if it's a $20 Walmart tent. I don't care if it's a $300, wall tent. That way, if my house burns down, my family is out of the elements, and I'm not being a logistical burden on whoever was kind enough to let me stay. Or if it is a bug out, same exact thought process.
Yeah.
The reason I specified that makes logical sense, if I have a buddy, for example, who's 10 minutes away, frankly speaking, if it's bad enough that I have to leave my house, 10 minutes away isn't far enough. I'm getting it. So the closest cache we plan to do is about an hour and a half drive. Just to get me away from whatever it is. And then we plan to do concentric circles from there. We don't have anybody far south. If I had to leave, I wouldn't aim south anyway.
Right.
But thankfully, I've got a good couple of places with people I trust pretty much in a straight line north of me. So that's our plan over the course of the next few months. We're going to stash 120 days worth of calories and a wall tent at each property in the event, should we need it, as a family. And, I got a big family. I got a lot of kids. 120 days is a lot of food for me in my context,
Yep.
A single dude putting up 120 days, that's, what, 3 5-gallon buckets, 4 5-gallon buckets. For me to put up 120 days is 2 55-gallon drums.
Wow.
So there's a logistical burden. I understand that if I show up by myself at your house, Tom, or Derek's house, or Aaron's house, it's nothing for you guys to give me a meal. If I show up with 7 mouths, yeah, that's a logistical nightmare, and I wouldn't want to put that on anyone.
And now we start looking at why I have 5,000 calories a day per person.
Yeah. But things like that. So that's my plan, is to put, or rather our household plan is to put up 120 days worth of calories and a location to sleep. Again, most people have a guest room in their house. I don't want to be a logistical burden on anybody. So that's just my thought process, and something me and the wife have worked out. Every situation is going to look different for every person, but as a rough rule of thumb, I think that's a decent one.
Here, let me speak on a quick comment, and let me know how this impacts what we're talking about. So Nate mentioned last hurricane evacuation, fuel dried up in every direction for miles. And that impacted me, and I was local. So how's that factoring into your plan?
Okay, couple things here. Let me share an anecdote first, and then I will talk about that. Me, Derek, and another brother of ours, Fig, were on our way back from Tennessee doing relief for Helene when Milton hit. By the time we got into town, fuel had dried up 2 hours from my house. We could not find fuel at a gas station for a 2-hour drive from my house. That was unexpected. Now, I have fuel stored and all that, but fuel stored when you're starting with a full tank of gas is different than fuel stored and now you've got a quarter tank of gas, you know? For us, I keep enough fuel on hand that I can fill all of my vehicles from empty to the top and then have enough for one more fuel tank. So, not that I ever let my vehicles all get to empty, but let's say they are all empty. I've got 2 full tanks worth stored on the property. I'm trying to adjust that into a better system because right now it's just in 5-gallon cans, and that's a pain in the ass to move. But like whenever I do the grindstone stuff or if ever I go out of state, I bring 20 gallons of fuel with me because my truck has a 20-gallon tank.
Mm-hmm.
On the thought of this will get me at least 400 something miles closer to home. If I'm in Georgia, great. If I'm in Tennessee, a walk home from Georgia is a heck of a lot better than a walk home from Tennessee. So we do have fuel on hand in portable containers for that. Like I said, I have an idea for a large fuel storage. I haven't had the time or the energy to put it into place yet, but that's also something I'm working on.
Yeah, that's a little bit trickier than the other stuff because your food, your beans and rice and all that stuff that can sit. But with the gas, depending on the rotation, where it's stored, if you're treating it or not, depending on what your philosophy is with it, you get a finite amount of time. So you'd probably have to do some kind of rotation.
Typically 1 year, right?
Or you work it out with whoever's at the site and say, hey, Derek, okay, it's time to rotate. Can you sit there and use up that gas and then replace it? Assuming the price is similar to the change, the same, because it could be $2.95 today, but it's $3.25 to 3 months from now.
Well, at that point, so I've thought about this, not in the terms of fuel specifically, but I've thought about it in the terms of firearms.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense for Derek to store a gun at my place and me to store a gun at Derek's place in the event of a problem when I've got plenty of guns and he's got plenty of guns? Realistically, if he shows up at my house and he's got nothing, I have no problem handing him a gun.
Yeah.
So it might be worth just buying an extra fuel can, taking it to Derek and going, hey, here's a can, do with it as you please, I may need some fuel someday. I'm not trying to drain his supply, but
right.
I'm sure he would have no problem giving me 5-10 gallons to get a little further up the road, just like I would have no problem squaring him away if he needed it,
Yeah.
But that goes back to having people having people you trust, and you have FaceTime with them.
Yeah.
We all deal with dozens, if not hundreds of people, either in this genre, online, whatever. But I know right now with people who I FaceTime with and like dwell time with and train with and do all that, I can think of half a dozen places I could show up unannounced tomorrow and say, dude, I'm screwed. I need help. And they would square me away, no questions asked. And, vice versa, if they ended up at my house tomorrow, no questions asked.
Yeah, no, those are all great points. You know, so just to help out the audience here, so just we'll use Derek an example again. If he normally keeps 6 5-gallon, canisters of fuel in his personal rotation, and Brendan throws up 1 or 2, hey, put these in your rotation. Then we don't have to worry about having old gas sitting there. Derek just needs to make sure there's got to be a go, no go. Keep these things topped off. So Brendan always has 2. He's already prepaid for it, and no one's out of the money, basically. So you always want to be fair with your people. You want to barter as much as possible, and then do the same thing. Like he can keep some extra gas at yours. The only challenge there, though, is that we don't go south. We go north, maybe east, but usually north. But you could do something in a different way. So like when it came to like the guns, you don't need to exchange guns, but you know what? Make sure you have your gun belt readily available. So it's part of your, my 2-minute burn. My house is cooked. My gun belt's coming with me,
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I would much rather you come to my house with fuel than guns and ammo.
Yeah.
Like fuel is going to be worth more than gold.
Yeah.
It's just not even just for transportation purposes, which is super important. You have wives. Y'all have wives. Y'all have, ladies. They like their fans. They like their air conditioning. You know what I'm saying? Don't know why they live in Florida, but they love it. They love the coolness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Run your generators. How much fuel do you need to run that type of stuff to keep her comfortable, right? Perpetuating normalcy for the people you love. Where have we heard that one before? Well, for me, normalcy is, does my wife have a room to go into that's cool, that she can cool down in during a hurricane, no power situation, stuff like that. So
yeah, very good point. Another thing to factor here too, just touching on guns again. So just say you conceal carry all the time in normie times, but if you're bugging out to Derek's property, is it still going to be practical to conceal carry while you're digging a ditch or putting in a fence or feeding animals, where you'd want to instead do outside the waistband? I don't run a property, so I don't have a context. So you guys that are, running animals or digging in the yard, DIYing.
So
they call me the AR-15 shepherd.
So as far as I'm concerned, I conceal carry everywhere, on my property, off my property. It's what I'm comfortable with. It's what I train on. It's what I'm used to. That being said, on my property and on brothers' properties, it's not uncommon to have a shotgun or a rifle slung across my back while we're doing homestead chores. And it's not a sense of, oh, we're doing patrols and we're doing this or that. It's like, no, you walk to the back of my property and rattlesnakes are a real freaking thing. So having a 20 gauge on your back is super useful. Or, you go out to some of my guys out west, those guys they always have a gun on them, a rifle or a shotgun on them. Not because they're waiting on something, because they're off grid and deer just randomly appear in front of them because they live in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need to fill your freezer. So if it's to the point to where the thought of I should have my handgun outside the waistband versus inside the waistband, I should already have a rifle. What is it? Clint Smith says, your pistol is only there to fight your way back to the rifle you should have never set down in the first place.
All right. We are at the almost 149. So we got a couple of minutes left. So let's do a little round table. See if there's anything you guys want to bring up or comment on. We got to keep this under 2 hours. So let's start with Aaron. Any final thoughts?
I look forward to when we actually start digging into the supply caches stuff. We went definitely in more depth, and probably took this a little bit away from the title of the show, but it's been two months since the last bro show, so we got to get in and knock the cobwebs off. This, like, the stay or go and why you would do each and under what circumstances. Like, I think coming up with specific plans is something that not enough people in the prepping world do.
Right.
You know, where are you headed? Well, when are you going to head there? Who knows that that's where you would head and when you would head there?
Yeah.
You know, if I have 3 different routes to a place, then would it be a good idea, since Brendan lives close by, for him to know, hey, Aaron might change his route based on this factor. So if he radios me and tells me he's on route 4 out of 3, I'm going to think, what might be going on that might have made him change so suddenly? You know, or if we need to link up because there's a threat to both of us, and whether it's a fire or that's why I think having some of the caches a little bit closer. If you get into a fire and you have somebody who lives 15 minutes away from you, wouldn't it be awesome to have a cache over at their house with like some electronics that might be in a cool, dry place?
Yep.
At least have like some sleeping bags so that your kids can go into an air conditioned house that night and you don't have to spend your $1,000 of barrel money, on whatever the Best Western's going to give you at 2:00 in the morning on a Wednesday.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we were able to go so in depth with the non SHTF. I think we definitely warrant at least another episode to hit some of the SHTF ones and go deeper into supply management, because I think we only spent like 10 minutes. We're not even scratching the surface on that. So, yeah, maybe that's what we'll do next episode. We'll have to dig a little bit deeper on the show notes. So I'll reach out to you guys, during the week. But we got less than 9 minutes. So Brendan, let's go to you. Final thoughts.
So everything we've talked about has been awesome. I do think, to borrow the military term, METTC is a huge freaking factor here. There's so many different variables. Like I was talking about with, like, if something's running me out of my house and I need to bug out, it's an East Palestine, Ohio situation where there's poison gas in the air, or if it's a nuke, 15 minutes down the road isn't going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like Aaron just said, and it's a fire, I would much rather my stuff be 15 minutes away than a 2-hour drive when my keys just burned up. Yep. So it's like with anything with prepping, try and keep it as general as possible. Have options that cover all your bases, because whatever you plan for, it's going to be the thing you didn't plan for. And that's just how it is. Trying to keep things as general as possible. I really like the idea. In fact, I wrote it down to talk with the wife later about what Aaron was saying about having the little jump drive at a buddy's house, electronics. I am not good with technology, so the thought of having electronic copies of my stuff has never crossed my mind. So that's something that we will be looking into for sure.
Yeah. And you could, number one, if you can't trust the person that you're at, then maybe you
should be dealing with a
password. Yeah. Well, you can password protect most external drives now, and even certain flash drives, you put the right software on there. Because somebody might have some addict cousin that is visiting and they take your jump drive somehow. So, you can trust your friend, but their cousin is the problem. So you can throw some password protection on there. That's something that's doable. It's solvable. All right, Derek, let's round out to you.
Man, I'm not sure I have much more else to add to that. I guess I do really like what Aaron was saying there at the end there about something I was thinking about was caches are nice to have 2 hours away, but would really suck if you had to walk to them. So, having some caches close by, or at least on your property, if you guys have property, like we try not to keep our food reserves in the house. The house burns up, we lose everything, right? So we try and keep things sparse and spread to different areas on the property, so that if one place does burn up or go down, we have it. But the supply cache thing is again, too many people focus on the guns and the ammo stuff, but I would much rather have things like batteries and flashlights and useful things stored in containers that are buried or at a buddy's house again, so that you can just get back up on your feet. That's pretty much all. I mean, you guys really killed it tonight. Yeah, I'm just here.
We love having you here, man. And yeah, I think it was a great conversation, and it's just opened the door for more in-depth stuff. I look forward to that next conversation. I know Aaron is a plethora of information out there, so I know he's jonesing, and he didn't get to sit there and say his piece tonight. He was kind of quiet, but he'll definitely dig deeper in the next episode. So guys, stay tuned for that. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit notifications, and send the video. If you thought this episode was worth watching, send it to somebody, and maybe they'll subscribe, and maybe they'll watch another episode. It would be really good. Great comments from everybody watching tonight. Really appreciate it. It enhances and adds to the show. It makes it more fun for us as well. Because, you know, as much as we love to talk and hear ourselves say things and hear each other, we love to have the audience speaking into, and it makes all the difference. All right. Everybody have a great week, and thanks for joining us. And we're all glad here on the panel for the Bro Show being back. Y'all have a good night.